In this video, let's try to see actually how to configure authorities for any application. So there are many ways how we can configure authorities inside Spring Security Framework. Few of them using the methods like has authority, has any authority, access method. So has authority method will accept a single authority value for which the user will be validated whether he or she has that authority, then only they will be allowed to access that endpoint. Whereas has any endpoint means you can pass multiple values like read, write, delete, and if the user has any of those authorities configured for them, then they will be allowed to access the endpoint. At the same time, if you have very complex condition where you can't configure using simple approach like has authority, has any authority, we can leverage access method which will accept expression based upon Spring expression language. It provides you unlimited possibilities like any complex scenario that I want to have a scenario where a user who has delete access but not write access should be able to access this path. Then in such scenarios, we can use access method and leverage logical operators as well like or and not for our authorization configurations. So let's try to go to the code and do some sample configuration and perform a testing around it to understand the things around authority in a more clear manner. So this is the previous configurations that we have done for all the URLs that we have. We protected the URLs my account, my balance, my loans, my cards, user, whereas notices and contract is permitted for everyone without authentication. So when there is no authentication, there is no authorization that we can configure. Due to that reason, we can't configure authorization for open URLs like notices and contact. But we can perform or configure authorization for the secured URLs like my account, my balance. Here, instead of authenticated, like authenticated indicates any person who is authenticated can access this URL. But I don't want to access to be all the authenticated users. I want to have allowed only for a particular users who has specific authority. So for such scenarios, I can remove this authenticated, which is free form of accessing the URL for all the authenticated users. Instead, I will use has authority. Here, I can say someone who has update authority can access my account. Similarly, I can mention my balance can be accessed by someone who has authority of read. For my loans, I would say delete. The names are up to you, not to be like we have to follow this. Since this is a string, we can configure any value that we want, and at the same time, my cards I'm saying it should be access to everyone who authenticated successfully. Now I have configured the authorization. In order to validate, first for a particular user, we should configure authorities inside database. Let's try to go to the database and understand how we can do this. Previously, we have a customer table where we have an customer details like email, password, and his role. But here you can see we can only configure one role or one authority at a time. But we want to have a scenario where a single user can have multiple authorities and roles. So for such scenarios, we can't go with a single table, but we should create one more table where we can store all our authorities of an user. For that purpose, I have created a table called authorities and inserted few records for the customer happy, and the customer happy has authorities called write and read, and authorities and customer has a foreign key relationship using customer ID column. So now we configured in the database for a single customer, we have many authorities configured. The scripts associated to this table creation, records insertion, I have mentioned in scripts.sql inside our workspace. Now we have done database configuration. How about JPA configuration? For that, we have to do some changes. So inside our customer entity, I have created one-to-many mapping between customer and authorities entity, and that's where you can see here one-to-many. I am mapping by a variable customer in the authority entity, and fetch type should be eager. So eager fetch type means, so whenever I'm trying to load customer details, I want to load the authority details as well by the JPA. And since it's a multiple values we can have, that's where we are having a set. And JSON ignore, this will make sure that we are not passing authorities details to the front end, so that the people who are using the front end will not know what authorities a particular user has. This is for security concerns. Similarly, we can go and check the authority entity also. Here we have a table name defined authorities, and we have a name where we define authority name for each and every record, and we configured many to one, like multiple authorities can be mapped to a single customer. That's why we are mentioned many to one, and the join column is customer ID between both authority and customer. With this, we have done JPA configuration also. Now let's try to go to our authentication provider. Here right now, we are using the role column mentioned inside our customer table. But now we change it to a different table called authorities. For the same reason, we should, instead of get role, we should call get authorities. So what we can do is, I have created a helper method granted authorities, which will accept the set of authorities and convert them into list of granted authorities. So directly what I will do here is, I can call get granted authorities and pass this entire customer dot get the first customer record and pass his authorities details. And now we don't need these two statements here. With this, you can see here, we will take the authorities from the database and we'll try to see by each record by record, and created a simple granted authority by passing the authority name, which is of type string. So now my Spring Security also hold the authorities details, and when someone try to access these endpoints, it will try to validate whether the particular user has this authority or not. So in these examples, you can see a user happy who has roles read and write. So instead of update, we can mention as write. Now the user happy who has authorities read and write can access these two endpoint and my cards as well and users as well, because my cards and users are allowed for any user, authenticated user, whereas my account, my balance, my loans are allowed only based upon authority. Since Happy does not have the authority delete, he should not be able to access my loans path. So let's try to test that. I'm starting the server. UI server also started successfully. Let me try to launch it. Enter the credentials, clicking sign in. So now I'm clicking on cards. I should be able to access. Yes. I'll go back. I'm clicking on my account, my balance, and I should be able to access. I'm able to access it. But coming to loans, I should have an authority delete to access it. But since I don't have, in this scenario, I should get an error 403, which indicates I'm not authorized to use this feature. Clicking on loans, and you can see nothing is coming, and you can go and see in the console we get an response from server saying that 403, which indicates that this user is not authorized to access my loans path. With this, we understand how to configure authorities and how to validate it. Here you can see single user has multiple authorities like write, read, delete. But you can use roles to club all such authorities and create a role indicating all such privileges that a user can have. I mean, role admin can read, delete, write, whereas a role user should be able to read the data. So if you have such requirement where I want to group all my privileges or authorities under roles, then we also have role-based authentication and authorization inside Spring Security. Let's try to understand how we can do that in the next video. Thank you and bye.